Jaya Shri Krishna. Let's start again. Put it in.
Yeah.
Put it in the phone. Let's start again. Put it in the phone. No microphone.
O Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ramo Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Gaura Hari Bo Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Haribo, Haribo, Gaura Hari. Jaya Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari. Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari. Gaura Hey, 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 Gaura Hey. Jai Shri Shri Guru Garangagan Hari Giri Hari. Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai. Sachinandana Gaura Hari Ki Jai. Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Amastotar Sarashishimat Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Amastotar Sarashishimat Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Amastotar Sarashishimat Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Jagat Guru Nitya Lila Pravishta Amastotar Sarashishimat Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Mahabhagavat Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Saptam Goswami Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Arupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Ananta Gota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Om Agina Timirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmaya Shri Guruve Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Taralaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantamana Petyam Apetykrityam Dvaipayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tammayatayo Taravo Benedustam Sarvabhuta Hridim Munimanatoshmi Bhaktya Vihina Aparar Lakshay Shiptascha Karmarita Rangamadye Kripamai Tvam Sharanam Prapana Brinde Namaste Charanarvindam. I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat pranams under the lotus feet of our most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Prabhishta Om Astottara Shishimat Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering the same again millions and millions of times under the lotus feet of our most beloved Nitya Lila Prabhishta Om Astottara Shishimat Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And again, I'm offering my Dandavat pranams to our most beloved Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. May he guide us in our study of this amazing scripture, Jaiva-Dharma. And begging for the mercy of all our Rupanuga Guru Vargya and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams. So continuing with our Jaiva-Dharma, and we'll do the second set of Falshruti, just to appreciate the overview of what this book is about. Jade Dvaita Jnana Hoya Chita Upadaya Krishna Bhakti Chiradina Upaya.
Such knowledge, which is solely related to the duality of this dull material world, is fit to be rejected, whereas transcendental knowledge of the divine duality within the spiritual world, Chit Jagat, should be accepted forever within one's heart, both as the Upai, the means of attainment, and the Upai, goal worthy of attainment.
Within one's heart. This means it comes down from the brain, from the mind. It's described in the 14th chapter how this knowledge comes through the Sangvit Shakti. This is the cognitive knowledge, the Sangvit Shakti. And then from the Sangvit Shakti, it comes into the heart and mixes with the Hladini Shakti. And that's where the bliss lies, in the heart. So we are describing many aspects of Jiva Tattva, but try to pull it into the realized place of the heart place. And we can tell when that place is touched upon because we will feel natural bliss coming. There will be natural anand will be coming. When it's just in the mind, the sensation of illumination of the consciousness may be there, but the actual bliss that comes in the heart, mixing with the Hladini Shakti, that won't be there until we bring it down with some mood of realization. So always we're focused on Bhav Bhakti. Our program is Sadhan Bhakti, and then always in Sadhan Bhakti, we're looking for Bhav Bhakti. Bhav Bhakti is that focus, Kriti Sadhya Bhavet Sadhya Bhav. This verse, we understand Kleshagni Shubhada. This is Sadhan Bhakti. And then Bhav Bhakti is Moksha Lukhata Krit Sudulabha. This is when the mood of Mukti and Moksha are completely disregarded. So Bhav Bhakti is our focus. And in this birth, my Gurudeva said, we can reach the stage of Bhav. We cannot attain Prem. The body wouldn't be able to hold Prem. But we can reach the stage of Bhav Bhakti. So our focus, even though we're hearing much knowledge and so on, we want to bring it into the heart region. So he's saying, accepted with forever within one's heart. Jiva Kabu Jadanai, Hari Kabu Nai,
Hari Saha Jiva Chintya Beda Beda Mai. The Jiva is not a product of dull matter, nor is he Keval Advaita, absolutely one in all ways with Sri Hari.
So these are two distinct aspects. We're not a product of dull matter. We're not Maya Shakti. We're not made of Maya. We're not made of that dull energy. We're coming from the Chit Shakti. And our constitution is Tatashta. And we're manifesting as the Jiva Tattva. We're not dull Maya Tattva. We're not inferior energy. Neither are we one with Hari in absolute. It's between the difference between the two, this distinction. If I was thinking that I was one with Krishna, then that is our mistake to begin with. That's the first apparat. When I turn away from, why do I turn away from Krishna? We discussed previously a couple of days ago, this vimukh. We turn away from Krishna because we actually want to be like Krishna. Krishna, if I'm looking at Krishna, I can't become Krishna that way because he's too beautiful. I just become lost in his beauty and service, which is our constitution. It's much easier to face Krishna, to fall in love with Krishna, than it is to try to exploit this material world. This material world, that exploitive effort is nothing but troublesome. It's nothing but difficulty from start to beginning, to end. And yet we just relentlessly do it with the illusion that some bliss is going to manifest from it.
The Jiva is inconceivably different and non-different from Hari.
Yes, we've discussed this beautifully at length in the 15th chapter. Deha Kava Jivanai, Dhara Bhogyanai,
Dhasa Bhogya Jiva Krishna Prabhu Bhokta Hai. The material body should never be considered to be the Jiva, and this earth is not for the Jiva to exploit and enjoy. The Jiva Swarup is Krishna Das, and thus he is meant for Krishna's enjoyment, whereas Sri Krishna's Swarup is Prabhu, Master, and Bhokta, enjoyer.
So clear, explicit. Jaiva-Dharma nahi ache, Deha Dharma kata, nahi ache Jiva Jnane Maya Vada Prata.
This book, entitled Jaiva-Dharma, neither discusses matters related to the dead material body, nor does it propound the Mayavada doctrine of the Jiva's oneness with Brahm.
Jiva Nitya Dharma
Bhakti
Bhakti
tahe jadanai, Shuddha Jiva Prema Seva Phale Payatai. The Jiva's Nitya Dharma is Bhakti, devoid of material motivation. The
His
Jiva
Nitya Dharma is Bhakti. This is our Nitya Dharma. Nitya Siddhyasya Bhavasya. Prakritamadi Sadyate. It's residing in like a seed. It's our nature, our natural nature. The nature of the tree in a seed form is to grow upwards to the sky. It's not its nature to do anything else other than that. But we have developed this nishag, this attraction for this acquired nature, which is not our nature. It's a deformity. We are all walking around in a deformed condition if we're not actually serving the Lord at every moment of our lives. And it's so exhilarating and it's so ecstatic to do that, to have kirtan, to speak from Shastra,
to honor prasadam with the devotees, to go to the temple, to have arti, to have sankirtan, to go on prikrama. There are so many activities that are just relishable for the devotees. So we have this world, this land of devotion that our acharyas have created for us. They've made it so simple for us. We don't really have to even think. We don't have to do anything. We just have to follow the guidance of these acharyas, and then very quickly we'll be purified of our own independent attraction to Maya. And when that independent attraction to Maya has been purified and replaced with the attraction to Krishna, then my constitutional position will arise, and then all fortune will come in the heart, in my attraction. But this has to be guided very carefully by Sadguru, because there's many places that we can go to. We can go into Gyan Kand, we can go still into Karm Kand, we can go into these, but to actually want to become a Palyadasi of Srimati Radhika, this is such an elevated stage. My Gurudev said 1 or 2 or 3 births. Try to understand. I mean, how much can we think of Sri Radhika now? How much are we able to focus our minds on service to Radhika? We should appreciate, yes, this is going to take time. It's going to take a number of births, but still, if the impression is there, this is what my Gurudev used to say all the time. He was speaking these things to make an impression in the heart, so that in a future time, a future birth, or a future time, then we will be able to manifest this impression. We'll have it clear. And we need to know the param. We're following Rupa Goswami, we're following Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and the Bindu of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. We're following Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. All of these different personalities, very, very carefully, we have to follow. We are Jiva Nitya Dharma Bhakti Tahe Jaranai
Shuddha Jiva Prema Seva Phale Payatai. The Jiva's Nitya Dharma is bhakti, devoid of material motivation. The Jiva, purified by Seva, attains the fruit of that Seva in the form of prem.
Yes, this will be our ultimate result of our practice, our sadhana. So we come back to our chapter 16. And I'll just read from the beginning of the section that we ended up yesterday and take it from there. So halfway down on page 360, or the first paragraph down. Brajanath, why must the jivas suffer for the sake of Bhagavan's pastime? So I've already explained that these questions are all being posed beautifully, as if the jiva is not responsible for his own situation. The jiva is afraid to take such responsibility. It's a fearful thing to take responsibility for my own condition in this world. But that responsibility must be taken if we want to actually be released from this Mayic illusion that we're in. Why must the jivas suffer for the sake of Bhagavan's pastimes? Babaji, the jivas possess some independence. This is actually a sign of Bhagavan's special mercy upon them. We should also understand, when we're starting to wake up and appreciate our own independence, how the Lord, Bhagavan, he has independence. He can either come to our lamenting cry or not. He has a choice. Just because you cry out with all your heart, does that necessarily mean that Krishna is going to come running? Is he our order supplier? I think in other sort of religions that I've read about, they have that impression that if you cry sincerely enough, Krishna must come. But he doesn't have to do anything. As we appreciate our own independence, we should appreciate Krishna's independence. Just because I am calling to him doesn't necessarily mean he will come when he feels he wants to come. You see? Appreciate his independence also. Inert objects are very insignificant and worthless because they have no such independent desire. Very simple. They have no consciousness. This mridanga doesn't have a consciousness of its own. It doesn't. I don't think it does anyway. No. The jiva has attained sovereignty of the inert world only because of his independent desire. Sovereignty means kingship, means I am the controller. He's imagining that he's the controller of his environment, just like the demons in particular. They consider themselves to be the controllers of the world. And to some degree, they're given some space to act like controllers. Tell us how to do this, how to do that, how to do this. And if everyone's going to follow the demons, they'll just keep on performing these demonic directives to the jivas. Take the vaccination. Everyone, oh, yes, sir, I must take that. Oh, yes, I will die if I don't take it. And then they inject you with some poisonous substance, etc. And then they just keep on going. They keep on going. Oh, yes, everyone's listening to us, so they'll keep doing it again and again. When the jiva wakes up his independent nature, he doesn't have to follow that order. He follows it to keep himself peaceful as much as possible. But internally, he's just fixed on, the whole world is going in one direction for sense gratification materially. That's what the whole world wants, isn't it? The whole world is just engrossed. Those few devotees who are turned against the tide of the world, they must be strong in their focus on what they're doing. Otherwise, they'll become weakened again. Their senses will grow weak and they'll want to exploit again the material energy. So that's why association is very important, that we encourage each other on this path. Misery and happiness are conditions of the mind. Thus, what we may consider misery is happiness for one engrossed in it. So I gave the example of a drunk. You know, he's engrossed in his drinking and he thinks he's happy. But one who can see that actually this is only leading to misery. You understand? Can you think of another example?
Any self-gratification, any enjoyment, material enjoyments.
Yes, is only going to lead to misery. Thus we may consider misery, thus what we may consider misery is happiness for one engrossed in it. Since all varieties of material sense gratification finally result in nothing but misery, a materialistic person only achieves suffering. Only suffering. That's the result of turning away from Krishna. We turn away from our soul's interest. And by nature, we understand the influence of the soul on our consciousness. And if we go away from the soul, we just become more and more like robotic, like we lose all sort of subtle sensitivity. And we become grosser and duller, almost like stone, like an animal. An animal is very dull. Their consciousness is very limited. Sankuli, it's very dull. In the human species, we have a very wonderful opportunity for moving the consciousness forward. Since all varieties of material sense gratification finally result in nothing but misery, a materialistic person only achieves suffering. When that suffering becomes excessive, it gives rise to a search for happiness. From that desire, discrimination arises. And from discrimination, the tendency for inquiry is born. You understand the sequence? When the suffering gets so much, then we start, why am I suffering? Why is this happening to me? Why are things so bad? Was this the purpose of why am I in this material world? It helps to wake us up. I had a friend who worked in a hospice for a long time, and he was telling me that at least 3 days before the patients left their bodies, a hospice is a place where you go to leave your body. So he was a helper there. And every time the patients would start to inquire about God very deeply. And that usually meant that in a few days you're going to leave your body. Like the soul, it knows it's going to leave the body. Intuitively, it knows it's about to vacate this body, which I've been in for so many years, whatever. And it rises, some Shakti comes into the consciousness of inquiry. So he was sharing with me, so many of these people, they would start inquiring, well, who is God? What is God, etc. This person was a devotee, so he would very easily start to tell them about Krishna and to chant Hare Krishna and like this, and it was very helpful. From that desire, discrimination arises, and from discrimination, the tendency for inquiry is born. As a result of this, one attains Sat Sangha, the association of saintly people, whereupon Shraddha develops. When Shraddha is born, the jiva ascends to a higher stage, namely the path of bhakti. Once you have your Shraddha intact, the platform, the clear focus on a supreme Lord, then serving that Lord, because it's the natural nature of the soul is to serve, because we know that is the mood of love. You just naturally develop a service attitude. This next paragraph is very beautiful. Gold is purified by heating and hammering. Being indifferent to Krishna, that means being vimukh, the jiva has become impure through engaging in mundane sense gratification. This nishad, this acquired nature, because he's been engaging in sense gratification, he's become impure. So it's described that gold, to purify it, you have to heat it and hammer it. Therefore, he must be purified by being beaten with the hammers of misery on the anvil of this material world. Very graphic. We know in Western world anyway, here also, a blacksmith, he has an anvil, you know, an iron block where he heats the iron and he beats it on it to shape it the way he wants it. So this is the analogy. Therefore, he must be purified by being beaten with the hammers of misery on the anvil of this material world. By this process, the misery of the jivas averse to Krishna finally culminates in happiness. He's finally purified and starts to look towards his best interest, which is service to Krishna. Finally, when you've taken so much suffering, therefore someone might say, well, is suffering the path to Krishna? Actually, it's not the path to Krishna, but it's Krishna's mercy to bring the distracted soul back to Krishna. He has to make him suffer intensely, and then that will make him turn towards Krishna. Therefore, he must be purified by being beaten with the hammers of misery on the anvil of this material. By this process, the misery of the jivas averse to Krishna finally culminates in happiness. Suffering is therefore just a sign of Bhagavan's mercy. Just like old age, it's a sign of mercy. It's built into the body. When you the body starts to break down, the organs start to, nothing you can do about it. You can spend all your time running to different doctors. They can't stop it. They can't stop death. You remember the beautiful description of, what's his name?
Michael Jackson.
No, the conqueror, the great.
Alexander
the Great. When he was leaving his body, and after he tried, yes, he told his doctors, all his doctors, you have to carry my coffin so that everyone could see you couldn't save my body. You doctors have to carry my coffin, and my arms should be spread out to know that I'm not taking anything with me. And then you should put all my wealth on the sides of the road as we go along, to know that this is all to be distributed. So this is a clear Alexander the Great understood this, that he was leaving like that. So he wanted to tell the people something. Suffering is therefore just a sign of Bhagavan's mercy. That is why far-sighted people see the suffering of the jivas in Krishna's pastimes as auspicious, though the nearsighted can only see it as an inauspicious source of misery. It's like today, in particular, we might see that the governments are being very much more intensely controlling on the whole planet generally. They're bringing in all kinds of different legislations to make things difficult for the people all over the planet. The demons are trying to do this, and the governments are being influenced by the demons. So this increased suffering is actually a great fortune. This is the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This increased suffering can bring more people to the camp of Mahaprabhu. When there's increased intense suffering on the planet, where will the people look? The sensitive person will perhaps look to the devotee, because the devotee has these answers, what we're describing here. What we're studying here is so important because it's describing the nature of the soul and his aversion to Krishna, which has caused him this suffering. It's the exact equation of our situation. There's no other scripture on the planet that describes it as clearly as this. Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, all these scriptures describe it very clearly. So if the devotee is understanding this, he can give so much help, especially he can give the Mahamantra. He can give this Mahamantra. If it's given with knowledge of that of the goal, just giving the mantra is wonderful and excellent, but then also the devotee should be sufficiently knowledgeable to lead that bewildered soul out of his illusion. We should know how to do that. And first we have to lead ourselves out of illusion, of course. But then we have all this understanding, this knowledge at our fingertips to help the suffering people, especially at this time. Brajanath. The jiva's suffering in his conditioned state is ultimately auspicious. I like the way Bhaktivinoda Thakur always shows the confirmation that Brajanath has understood. Brajanath understands the suffering is auspicious. But in the present state, it is very painful. Since Krishna is omnipotent, couldn't he think of a less troublesome path? Again, he's questioning Krishna. Like, come on, make it easy for me. Less responsibility on my head. Babaji, Krishna's Leela is extremely wonderful and of many varieties. This is also one of them. So this is a Leela of Krishna's to bring the conditioned soul back to him. If Bhagavan is independent and almighty, this is what I shared before about to appreciate Bhagavan's independence, because we're not just thinking from my own independence, but Bhagavan's independence also. Accept that. If Bhagavan is independent and almighty and performs all kinds of pastimes, why should this be the only pastime that he neglects? Why should it be? This is a monumental pastime. Why should he neglect it? He's the one who's arranged it all. He's empowered Mahavishnu to be attracted to Mahamaya, to push that glance into Durgama, to begin this whole cosmic material manifestation. He's arranged that. No pastime can be rejected if there is to be full variety. Besides, the participants in other types of pastimes also must accept some sort of suffering. There is suffering everywhere. Even the gopis experience the suffering of separation. And when they're even in union, sometimes they're considering that separation may come after the union. So there's so much types of suffering that are there. But if they culminate and result in union and happiness, then they can only be supportive of that journey. This is what Krishna has said previously, right? That this suffering can lead to inquiry, can lead to happiness ultimately. No pastime can be rejected if there is to be full variety. Besides, the participants in other types of pastimes also must accept some sort of suffering. Sri Krishna is the enjoyer, Purush, and the active agent, Karta. All ingredients and paraphernalia are controlled by his desire. It's his desire, that independent desire, that is controlling, we can say, Swarup Shakti, where all the functions of Swarup Shakti are manifesting into this world. Are controlled by his desire and subject to his activities. It is natural to experience some suffering when one is controlled by the desire of an agent. So somewhere along the line, there's some discomfort, but that discomfort becomes a joy ultimately. Understand? However, if that suffering brings pleasure in the end, it is not true suffering. It's like the suffering of a mother giving birth. So much pain, but then the joy of looking at her newborn baby floods her with bliss and happiness. But even then, it's not finished. Then the mother has to wake so many times in the night to feed the baby. So there's bliss and suffering going on throughout. And it may be that the child is a good child and doesn't bring the mother suffering in the future, but the child could also be not a good child and bring so much suffering to the mother in the future. How can you call it suffering? Oh, however, if that suffering brings pleasure in the end, it is not true suffering. How can you call it suffering? The so-called suffering that one undergoes in order to nourish and support Krishna's pastimes is actually a source of delight. The jiva's independent desire has caused him to abandon the pleasure of serving Krishna and instead accept suffering in Maya. This is the jiva's fault, not Krishna's. So he's making this point when Brajanath is saying it's not my fault. Brajanath is throwing it back on him. No, it's the jiva's fault. The jiva is responsible for this because he has his independent desire. We've misused our independence, quite simply. Brajanath, what harm would there have been if the jiva had not been given independent desire? Krishna is omniscient, and he gave his independence to the jiva, even though he knew that he would suffer on account of it. So isn't he responsible for the jiva's suffering? Isn't it Krishna's fault because he gave us independence? If you didn't have independence, you would hate it. We cherish our independence. Babaji, independence is a precious jewel, in the absence of which inert objects are insignificant and worthless. If the jiva had not received independence, he would also have become as insignificant and worthless as the material objects. Right? The jiva is an atomic spiritual entity, so he must certainly have all the qualities of spiritual objects. It's very wonderful. The only difference is that Bhagavan, who is the complete spiritual object, possesses all these qualities in full, whereas the jiva only has them to a very minute degree. You see, it's all about accepting the supremacy of the Lord. It actually, once we accept the Lord fully and his greatness fully, then of course I will just give my whole life to bring him joy and happiness, that nothing else will exist for me. But before I come to that stage, if I'm still trying to battle with the Lord, then there's going to be suffering. If I'm still trying to put my strength in front, my desires before his desires, with my little bit of independence, this is the analysis of it. Understand? Possesses all these qualities in full, whereas the jiva only has them to a very minute degree. Independence is a distinctive quality of the spiritual object. Independence is a distinctive quality of the spiritual object, and an object's inherent quality cannot be separated from the object. That's its dharma. It can't be separated. You can't take the independence away. If you take the independence away, it's dull matter. It's no longer an independent entity, right? It's like a brick. That's what happens. I think you get that in severe mental cases sometimes. They just become like really tragically, they've lost their brains, you know? They've lost that independent drive, that energy to think for themselves. Consequently, the jiva also has this quality of independence, but only to a very minute degree, because he is atomic. It is only because of this independence that the jiva is the supreme object in the material world and the Lord of creation. So he's sort of repeating himself again. It's like, because Brajanath hasn't understood, so he's had to say it again and again, just like in other parts when we were discussing in the 14th chapter, the distinction between Ishvara and Jiva. Always the Jiva, because he's been conditioned for so long, trying to be the controller, he has a very hard time giving that up and realize that he's just atomic and to become submissive. And the process to come to that is to purify this false ego conception of my identity in the material world. My association with matter is for my own pleasure. But if my association with matter is to further the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is to further the mission of the Vaishnavas and so on, then my life will become completely blissful and satisfying. The independent jiva is a beloved servant of Krishna, and thus Krishna is kind and compassionate towards him. Seeing the misfortune of the jiva as he misuses his independence and becomes attached to Maya, he chases after him, weeping, and appears in the material world to deliver him. Sri Krishna, the ocean of compassion, his heart melting with mercy for the jivas, manifests his achintya lila in the material world, thinking that his appearance will enable the jiva to see his nectarian pastimes. What's that beautiful verse? Manusyanam sahasra kaschit adasi. That verse. Anugrahaya bhaktanam manusyan deha ashtadara bhajate tad rishi kritva yashrutva tatprao bhavet. This is saying in the Rasa Panchadya that Krishna only manifests to demonstrate his loving pastimes in the Ras Lila for the jivas to become inspired towards him. Anugrahaya bhaktanam manusyam deha ashridataha bhajate tat rishi kritva yashrutva tatparo bhavet. This bhavet means it's in the imperative. It means you must become attracted to Krishna if you hear about Krishna's Ras Lila. If you hear Krishna dancing with, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes 300 billion gopis. 300 billion. It's achintya. It's completely achintya, and it has nothing to do with the conditioned jiva. It's a transcendental activity performed by purely transcendental souls, the gopis from Vrindavan, with the Supreme Lord, and they're dancing on the moonlit night beside the Jamuna, and all the instruments appear, the personification of all the instruments appear by themselves, and the dancing is just phenomenal. They have all these beautiful flags and banners and so on, and they're all dancing in huge circles. We can't even calculate how extraordinary it is. And Vrinda Devi, she manifests as the audience to clap. Somebody has to be there to appreciate the beauty of it. So Vrinda Devi and all her messengers, they all come and they appreciate this Ras Lila. So this is an example of Krishna coming to enlighten and attract the jivas by his Vrindavan Leelas. They're so dancing on the hoods of Kaliya. It's such an attractive pastime. It's just an incredible pastime. And the love between the gopis and Krishna, so much of the description is written there for us to appreciate how much the gopis are entranced by Krishna completely. They give up everything in their homes and they run to the sound of Krishna's flute. And when they get there to begin the Ras Lila, Krishna sends them home. They become so, they start to feel our prem is not good enough for Krishna. This is how it's described. And then they refute Krishna's arguments. They say, yes, we should worship our husbands, but before that, we should worship our guru, and you are our guru. So they defeat Krishna. But these exchanges between the gopis and Krishna will melt the heart of the sadhak on his journey. When he's reading these pastimes, especially from the 10th canto, so many pastimes there, from the 5th chapter through till about the 35th chapter, 36th chapter, or the 46th, including Brahmara Gita. These pastimes are to melt the heart in attraction to Krishna. So this is what it means, running after the jiva, weeping and weeping. He's running after us, performing all these, what else can he do? His heart melting with mercy for the jivas manifests his achintya lila in the material world, thinking that his appearance will enable the jivas to see his nectarian pastimes. However, the jiva does not understand the truth about Krishna's pastimes, even after being showered by so much mercy. So Krishna then descends in Sri Navadvip in the form of Guru. Mahaprabhu is our Bhajan Shiksha Guru. He's performing sadhan in the Gambhira in Puri. He's showing us how to actually act as a sadhak in this birth. Every day he's chanting his fixra. Every day he's hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit. Every day he's going to Tota Gopinath or Darshan. Every day he's speaking with the devotees. And then regularly he's performing Harinam Sankirtan, practically daily, especially during the Rath Yatra time. I mean, how amazing that Mahaprabhu himself, he should have kirtan from say 10 o'clock in the morning until maybe 10 o'clock at night with all his devotees. For the material body, that's quite uncomfortable, because Rath Yatra, for example, is always in the month of Jyeshta, the month of June, July, this very hot month. So we can imagine the difficulty that must have been there for the bodies. But still, Mahaprabhu is doing that out of compassion for the jivas, to show them the nature of the bliss that can be appreciated by doing this Sankirtan Ras, and to set the example for us as Guru. Mahaprabhu is Bhajan Shiksha Guru. This is saying very clearly in Mana Shiksha. Raghunath Das is saying this, Bhajan Shiksha Guru. He never came as God. He never came as that supreme person. He came as a covered avatar so that he could show us this mood of dedication to Krishna. If he came as Krishna, how could he demonstrate dedication to Krishna? He comes in the mood of Radha, and Radha is the most dedicated personality to Krishna. So we see her mood. So we get even more than just dedication to Krishna. We will become naturally dedicated to Sri Radhika, because we witness directly her dedication to Krishna. And all our Guru Vargya are directing us to this mood of Radha Dasyan. All our Guru Vargya, they all are Manjaris. They all are having this Staivav, it's called Bhavalas. Their natural inclination is just to serve Radhika. That's their Staivav, is just to serve Radhika. So this is our Guru Vargya. So we have all of this. And Mahaprabhu as our Guru. How merciful is Krishna? Brajanath here, he's saying, couldn't Krishna have thought of something better? Why did he give us this independence? He's given us this independence so we can independently make this choice to connect with Sri Guru in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and absorb his teachings, especially in the Gambhira with Rai Ramananda and Swarup Damodar. His talks are all recorded in the Adi Lila chapter 4 in particular, in the Madhya Lila chapter 1 and chapter 2, and in the Antya Lila all the way through, because Raghunath stayed in Jagannath Puri for 14 years. Mahaprabhu was intensely absorbed for the last 12 years. So Raghunath Das, he was there the whole time, witnessing all these transformations of Mahaprabhu. So we're getting first-hand explanations on the moods not just the facts, etc., but the moods. Raghunath Das is such an exalted personality, and Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj also was able to enumerate these with the help and guidance also of Sri Rupa Goswami. So we're getting them firsthand about the glories of Mahaprabhu. So this is the gifts that we have from Krishna. This is in the form of him running after us, weeping and weeping. The Chaitanya Charitamrita is running after us, weeping and weeping. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is pointing this out in case we missed it, in case we didn't realize. And Chaitanya Bhagavat also, the pastimes here in Navadvip. But the pastimes in Puri are especially special. He descends in Sri Navadvip in the form of Guru. He personally describes the supreme process of chanting his name, form, qualities, and pastimes, and personally instructs and inspires the jivas to take to this path by practicing it himself. How could he encourage anyone unless he practiced it himself? He wandered all over South India for 2 years, just his arms raised, just chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, and attracting so many souls to also chant, giving so much mercy. Baba, how can you accuse Krishna of being at fault in any way when he is so merciful? His mercy is unlimited, but our misfortune is lamentable. Again, it's our responsibility. If I consider my misfortune lamentable, whose fault is that? Everything is there in front of me. What is inhibiting me to actually dive in and take it back? We'll think of many excuses. Oh, it's his fault, this one's fault, the government's fault, something. But actually, it's no one's fault except when my greed and enthusiasm becomes intense enough, that will carry me. The current of that enthusiasm, if it's pure, will carry me right into these leelas where I can just remain absorbed in drinking the holy name daily, like residing near Yogpit. It's the greatest place on earth to reside. You should never leave. You should stay but will your mind allow you to stay forever? Your mind will go back to your country and think, oh yes, I was happy then. There was a time when I was happy, when I was with certain people, family or whatever. But you were never happy there. But now we're in transition. So it's sometimes not easy. But if we just remain and stay and have absolute faith that yes, by practicing this path and no other path, that all my fortune will manifest. So somehow we should pray for the strength and intelligence to actually just remain. Because as soon as you step out of the Dham, it's another world completely. In the holy Dham, it's a great mercy and benediction that Krishna has given and provided. Because all the time on the background, on the peripheral of the consciousness, is the Sankirtan Ras going on. All the time that Kirtan is actually, maybe we can't hear it, completely, but it's there in the background. But if you go out into Moscow, London, Rome, Paris, New York, it's not there. That Sankirtan Ras won't be there in the same way. Of course, there's the desire sometimes to go and to share this. But are we very sure of our strength to share that in those countries? I'm just saying that it's very beneficial for all the jivas if they have the opportunity to remain in either Vrindavan or in Navadvip and absorb these teachings of our Guru, who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And mercy will come, without a doubt, to support our journey. So Baba is saying, yes, let me just read that last part again because it's very, very beautiful. Sri Krishna, the ocean of compassion, his heart melting with mercy for the jivas, manifests his achintya lila, his inconceivable leelas. particularly the Rasa Leela, because the Rasa Leela is the crest jewel of all Krishna's pastimes. There's nothing more. Can we conceive even of 1 million people dancing? What to speak of 300 billion? Inconceivable. So we hear about these descriptions, and great joy can come in the heart, and attraction to Krishna and the Rasa Leela. However, the jiva does not understand the truth about Krishna's pastimes, even after being showered by so much mercy. So Krishna then descends in Sri Navadvip in the form of Guru. Because when Krishna was present on the planet, who understood the Rasa Leela? No one actually understood. Maybe a few Siddha Purushas. No one really understood. So Mahaprabhu Krishna has come to explain what he was doing in Vrindavan. He's come as Guru to shower us with appreciation for his Vrindavan pastimes. He personally describes the supreme process of chanting his name. I missed a part out. However, the jiva doesn't understand the truth about Krishna, even after being showered by such. So Krishna then descends in Sri Navadvip in the form of Guru. He personally describes the supreme process of chanting his name, form, qualities, and pastimes, and personally instructs and inspires the jivas to take to this path by practicing it himself. Baba, how can you accuse Krishna of being at fault in any way when he is so merciful? His mercy is unlimited, but our misfortune is lamentable. So we should think, how fallen and stupid am I? Not how Krishna didn't get it right. He shouldn't have made me suffer like this, like Brajanath is suggesting. But how unfortunate am I that I'm not able to fully capitalize on this mercy that's being given. So I'm going to read the next question from tomorrow about Maya Shakti. But again, Brajanath is making an objection. I'll just read this one quick. Is Maya Shakti the cause for our misfortune then? Would the jivas have had to suffer like this if the omnipotent and omniscient Sri Krishna had kept Maya away from them? We'll find that out tomorrow. But just this was very inspiring to appreciate how much Krishna has actually showered upon us. So much. And still, I'm not capitalizing. Still, I think I want to do something separate from his interest and stay resolutely in this world of illusion because of my own independent choice. So many things to take from this. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai, Jaiva-Dharma ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, kripa sindhubheva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnave namo namaha. So no class tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday. Jai Vaishnavas ki jai, Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai, Gopinande. Okay.